A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
You know, Herman, I was looking at a map of the Mediterranean the other day, and if you zoom in really closely on the island of Cyprus, you see these two strange little cutouts. They are not part of the Republic of Cyprus. They are not part of some disputed zone or a United Nations buffer area. They are technically, legally, and functionally part of the United Kingdom. It is like a little piece of London was just dropped into the middle of the Levant.
It is one of the most fascinating geopolitical anomalies in the world, corn. Our housemate Daniel actually sent us a prompt about this very thing. He was asking why the Royal Air Force still maintains such a massive presence there 66 years after Cyprus became an independent nation. And specifically, he wanted to know about the strategic link between those bases and Israel, given how close they are.
It is a great question because, on the surface, it looks like a colonial relic. You have got these two areas, Akrotiri and Dhekelia, which are known as the Sovereign Base Areas, or SBAs. They cover about 98 square miles. That is roughly 3% of the entire island. But as we have discussed on the show before, especially when we talked about the logistics of the air bridge in episode 1005, geography is destiny in the world of military power projection.
Herman Poppleberry here, by the way, for anyone just joining us. And corn, you hit the nail on the head. The word sovereign is the most important part of that title. Most people think the United Kingdom just rents that land, like the United States might rent a base in Japan or Germany. But that is a major misconception. Under the 1960 Treaty of Establishment, the United Kingdom did not just lease the land, they retained absolute sovereignty over it. When Cyprus became independent, the British essentially said, "You can have the island, but we are keeping these two specific corners as British overseas territory."
Which is a massive distinction. If you are renting a base, the host country can tell you what you can and cannot do. They can say you are not allowed to fly missions to a certain country from their soil, because it might hurt their diplomatic relations. But because Akrotiri is sovereign British soil, the Royal Air Force can do whatever the British government deems necessary without asking for permission from the Cypriot government. That makes it an unsinkable aircraft carrier that never has to worry about its docking rights being revoked.
And that aircraft carrier is parked in the most strategic spot on the planet. If you look at the proximity, RAF Akrotiri is only about 250 miles from Tel Aviv. For a modern fighter jet, that is a hop, skip, and a jump. It is less than 40 minutes of flight time. That proximity is not just a coincidence or a nice bonus. It is a fundamental pillar of how the West maintains stability in the Middle East.
Well, let's dig into that proximity factor. When Daniel asked if the location is a deliberate hedge for Israeli security, I think we have to look at the history of how these bases have been used. It is not just about having a place to park planes. It is about the intelligence infrastructure and the ability to respond to regional escalations in real time. We saw this very clearly during the regional tensions in 2024 and 2025. When things get heated in the Eastern Mediterranean or the Levant, Akrotiri becomes the primary staging ground for everything from reconnaissance to active air defense.
It really does. And you mentioned intelligence, which is a huge part of this. Dhekelia, the eastern base, is home to some of the most sophisticated signals intelligence facilities in the world, specifically at Ios Nikolaos. Because of its height and its location, it can essentially listen to the entire region. But focusing on the Royal Air Force side at Akrotiri, the logistics are staggering. It serves as the main hub for Operation Shader, which is the ongoing mission against Islamic State remnants. But more importantly for our discussion today, it acts as a vital node in what we call the technical handshake between the United Kingdom, the United States, and Israel.
I like that term, the technical handshake. We touched on that in episode 8084 when we were looking at hybrid missile defense. But how does that actually manifest between the Royal Air Force and the Israeli Air Force? Because they are two very different organizations with different mandates. Is it just a matter of being friendly neighbors, or is there a deeper level of integration?
Oh, it is much deeper than being friendly neighbors. It is about interoperability. The Royal Air Force and the Israeli Air Force are both operators of the F-35 Lightning II. That is a fifth-generation stealth fighter that is basically a flying supercomputer. When you have two allied nations flying the same advanced platform in the same neighborhood, the level of data sharing is intense. They are not just talking on the radio. Their systems are literally talking to each other through encrypted data links like Link 16 and the Multifunction Advanced Data Link, or MADL.
So, if a Royal Air Force pilot is flying a patrol over the Mediterranean and their sensors pick up a potential threat coming out of Syria or Lebanon, that data can be fed directly into the Israeli Integrated Air Defense System in near real time.
Precisely, and vice versa. This is what makes the proximity so valuable. You have a persistent British presence that acts as an extra set of eyes and ears for Israel, and a forward deployed force that can intervene if a situation spirals out of control. We saw this during the Iranian drone and missile attacks against Israel in April of 2024. The Royal Air Force jets flying out of Akrotiri were actually involved in intercepting those threats before they even reached Israeli airspace. That was a watershed moment. It proved that the sovereign base areas are not just historical curiosities, they are active components of a coordinated regional defense.
It is interesting you mention that, because it highlights the political worldview here. From a conservative, pro-Western perspective, having that British footprint in Cyprus is a massive win for regional stability. It provides a layer of strategic depth for Israel that would not exist otherwise. Israel is a small country. It does not have much room to breathe. Having a friendly, high-tech military power stationed just 250 miles away provides a sort of safety net.
And it is a safety net that the British are very keen to maintain. You have to remember, the Royal Air Force has a long-standing relationship with the Israeli Air Force through exercises like Blue Flag. Blue Flag is this massive, multinational combat exercise held in Israel. The British have been sending their most advanced assets there for years. They practice complex scenarios together, things like suppression of enemy air defenses and high-end air-to-air combat. This creates a level of professional familiarity. The pilots know each other. The commanders have each other on speed dial.
I wonder, though, about the friction. You mentioned earlier that the bases are sovereign, but they still exist on an island with a local population and a government that might not always be thrilled about being a target for regional adversaries. Does the Republic of Cyprus ever push back on this? Or is the economic benefit of having thousands of British personnel and their families there enough to keep the peace?
It is a delicate balance, Corn. There is definitely a sovereignty paradox at play. The Republic of Cyprus officially wants the bases back, or at least more control over them. There are occasional protests, and the political rhetoric can get a bit spicy during election seasons. But behind the scenes, the cooperation is quite strong. The British provide search and rescue services for the whole region using the 84 Squadron, which recently transitioned to the Puma HC-2 helicopters. They also provide a lot of jobs and infrastructure support. Plus, in a world where Turkey is increasingly assertive in the Eastern Mediterranean, having a permanent British military presence is a bit of a security guarantee for the Cypriots too, even if they do not like to admit it publicly.
That makes sense. It is the classic enemy of my enemy, or the devil you know situation. But let's go back to the technical side. You mentioned the air bridge earlier. For the listeners who might have missed episode 1005, can you explain why Akrotiri is so vital for the logistics of moving hardware and personnel?
Think of Akrotiri as the ultimate transit lounge for the Middle East and East Africa. If the United Kingdom needs to move troops to Jordan, or supplies to a carrier group in the Red Sea, or support for operations in Iraq, it almost always flows through Akrotiri. It has a massive runway, extensive fuel storage, and the kind of security you can only get on a sovereign base. It allows the Royal Air Force to maintain a continuous flow of assets without having to rely on the whims of third-party nations for overflight or landing rights. In military terms, we call this logistical throughput. Without Akrotiri, the British ability to project power east of the Suez Canal would be severely degraded. It would take much longer to respond to crises, and it would be much more expensive.
So, it is the grease in the gears of Western intervention. And when you look at the proximity to Israel again, it is not just about the fighter jets, it is about the transport planes. If Israel were in a prolonged conflict and needed an emergency resupply of certain components or munitions that the British or Americans were providing, Akrotiri is the logical jumping-off point. It is the last stop before you hit Israeli soil.
It provides that essential staging ground. And let's be honest, in the current geopolitical climate, where we see an emerging axis of Russia, Iran, and China trying to undermine Western influence, these outposts are more important than ever. We talked about this in episode 555, Walking Between Raindrops with the New Axis. The British presence in Cyprus is a physical manifestation of the commitment to the rules-based order in the Mediterranean. It tells the Iranians and their proxies that there is a permanent, high-readiness Western force right on their doorstep.
It is a deterrent, a very loud, very visible deterrent. But I want to push you a bit on the cooperation with the Israeli Air Force. Is there a limit to it? I mean, the United Kingdom has its own diplomatic goals in the Middle East, and they do not always align perfectly with Israel's. How do they navigate the moments where the interests diverge?
That is the million-dollar question. The cooperation is primarily technical and operational. It is about sharing the picture of the sky. It is about making sure they do not accidentally shoot each other down in a crowded airspace, which we covered in episode 1002 regarding friend or foe identification. But when it comes to high-level policy, like a specific strike into a neighboring country, the British might keep their distance. They provide the framework for defense and intelligence, but they are not necessarily partners in every offensive operation. However, the beauty of the technical handshake is that once the systems are integrated, the information flows automatically. You cannot really turn off the data link just because you disagree with a specific policy decision on a Tuesday. The integration creates a level of dependency that actually stabilizes the relationship.
That is a fascinating point. The technology almost forces a level of cooperation that the diplomats might struggle to maintain. It is a digital bond. If your radars are integrated and your F-35s are sharing sensor data, you are effectively operating as a single unit in many ways. It makes it very hard for a regional adversary to drive a wedge between the two.
It really does. And I think that is what Daniel was picking up on with his prompt. There is this sense that the relationship is more than just a historical alliance. It is a modern, high-tech partnership built on shared threats and shared hardware. When you look at the Royal Air Force's recent investments in Akrotiri, they are not winding down. They are upgrading. They are improving the runways. They are building new hangars for the F-35s, and they are enhancing the communication arrays. They are digging in for the long haul.
It is funny because people have been predicting the end of these bases for decades. They said they were too expensive, too controversial, or that long-range missiles would make them obsolete. But here we are in 2026, and they seem more relevant than ever. Is there a risk, though, from those long-range precision strikes? If a conflict really scaled up, is a small island base like Akrotiri just a sitting duck?
Well, that is the challenge of modern warfare. Nowhere is truly safe from a high-end missile threat. But that is why the integrated air defense is so critical. Akrotiri is not just defended by British assets. It is part of a regional umbrella that includes Royal Navy destroyers with Sea Viper missiles, American assets, and yes, the proximity to Israel's legendary multi-layered defense system. The bases are well defended. And more importantly, attacking a sovereign British base is a massive escalation. It is not like attacking a rebel outpost in the desert. It is an attack on the United Kingdom itself. That sovereign status provides a layer of political protection that is just as important as the physical missiles.
Right, it is the difference between a skirmish and a world war. If someone launches a missile at Akrotiri, they are inviting the full weight of the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force, not to mention their NATO allies. It is a very high price to pay for a tactical strike.
So, to wrap up that part of Daniel's question, the proximity to Israel is absolutely a factor. It allows for a level of joint defense and intelligence gathering that would be impossible from a base in the United Kingdom or even from a carrier group that has to rotate in and out. The sovereign base areas provide a permanent, stable, and sovereign platform for Western power right in the heart of the Levant.
It is amazing how much of our modern security relies on these historical footprints. It makes me think about the broader concept of strategic depth. We usually think of depth as having a lot of land, like Russia or the United States. But in the modern era, Strategic depth is about these nodes, these little pockets of sovereignty that allow you to reach across the globe.
That is a great way to put it. Strategic depth through connectivity rather than just geography. And for Israel, having that node 250 miles away is a huge component of their national security architecture. It is not just about what the Israeli Air Force can do on its own. It is about what the entire Western alliance can do from that specific coordinate in the Mediterranean.
So, looking forward, what do we see for the future of the sovereign base areas? Do you think the British will eventually be forced to renegotiate the 1960 treaty, or is the current arrangement sustainable for another 60 years?
I think as long as the Middle East remains volatile, the British will fight tooth and nail to keep those bases. The cost of losing them is just too high. Imagine if they had to run all their regional operations from the United Kingdom or from a base in, say, Qatar. They would lose that sovereign freedom of action in the Eastern Mediterranean. They would lose that direct link to the Israeli defense network. I think we might see some adjustments in how they interact with the Republic of Cyprus. Maybe more shared use of certain facilities or more economic concessions, but the core sovereignty? That is a red line for London.
It is a fascinating example of how the past and the future are completely intertwined. You have this 1960s treaty governing the use of 21st century stealth fighters and satellite arrays. It is the sovereignty paradox in action. You hold the land, so you can control the data.
And the data is what wins wars today. Whether it is tracking a drone launched from hundreds of miles away or coordinating a complex airstrike, the information flowing through Akrotiri is the lifeblood of the regional security mission.
Well, I think we've given Daniel a lot to chew on. It is not just a base, it is a sovereign outpost, a logistical hub, and a critical partner for Israel, all rolled into one 98 square mile package.
It really is. And it is a testament to the enduring importance of physical geography in a digital age. You can have all the satellites in the world, but sometimes you just need a runway and a radar dish on a specific piece of dirt.
Before we wrap up, I want to pivot to some practical takeaways for our listeners. Because while this sounds like high-level geopolitics, it actually has some real-world implications for how we understand the news and the world around us.
I agree. The first takeaway for me is to always look at the legal status of military bases when you hear about them in the news. There is a world of difference between a base on foreign soil and a sovereign territory. When you see the Royal Air Force operating out of Cyprus, remember that they are on British soil. That changes the legal and political calculus of everything they do. It gives them a freedom of action that most other nations do not have.
My takeaway would be about the nature of modern alliances. We tend to think of them in terms of treaties and public statements, but the real strength of an alliance today is in the technical integration. If you want to know how close two countries are, don't look at the photo ops of the politicians. Look at whether their fighter jets can share sensor data in real time. That technical handshake is the true measure of a partnership.
That is a great point. And a third takeaway is to appreciate the concept of the air bridge. In a globalized world, the ability to move things quickly and securely across vast distances is a superpower. Bases like Akrotiri are the fuel stops and the warehouses that make that superpower possible. If those nodes are threatened, the whole system of Western influence starts to wobble.
It is about the invisible architecture of the sky. We see the planes, but we don't always see the network that keeps them in the air.
And hey, if you are finding these deep dives into the invisible architecture of the world interesting, we would really appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your podcast app or on Spotify. We have been doing this for 994 episodes now, and your feedback is what keeps us going. It also helps other curious people find the show.
Yeah, it really does make a difference. We love seeing what you guys think of these topics. And if you have a weird prompt of your own, like the one Daniel sent us today, you can go to our website at myweirdprompts.com and use the contact form there. We read every single one of them.
We do. And you can also find our full archive of nearly 1,000 episodes on the website. If you want to hear more about the technical side of missile defense or the geopolitics of the Mediterranean, just search the archive. There is a lot of gold in there.
All right, I think that just about covers it for today. The sovereign base areas of Cyprus, the unsinkable aircraft carriers that keep the Mediterranean secure. It is a wild story when you really look into the details.
It truly is. Thanks for the great questions today, Korn. I always enjoy digging into the technical nuances with you.
Same here, Herman. It is what we do. This has been My Weird Prompts. Thanks for listening, everyone. We will catch you in the next one.
Until next time.
You know, Herman, I was thinking as we were talking about those 98 square miles. It is such a small area, but it really does punch above its weight. It is like the tactical version of a small business that dominates a niche market.
That is a very corn poppleberry way to look at it. But you were right. In the military world, we talk about force multipliers. A base like Akrotiri is a force multiplier for the entire Royal Air Force. It makes every single one of their planes more effective because they have a place to land, refuel, and rearm right where the action is.
And it is not just the Royal Air Force. We should mention that the United States uses those bases too. The U-2 spy planes have been flying out of Akrotiri for decades. It is a joint effort, even if the British are the ones holding the deed to the land.
Oh, absolutely. The American presence there is significant, especially on the intelligence side. It is a central hub for the entire Five Eyes intelligence sharing alliance. When we talk about the technical handshake with Israel, the Americans are often the third hand in that shake. They provide a lot of the satellite data and high-altitude reconnaissance that feeds into the regional picture.
It is a crowded little island, isn't it? You have the Republic of Cyprus, the Turkish-occupied North, the United Nations buffer zone, and then these two British sovereign areas. It is a miracle they all get along as well as they do.
It is a testament to the power of shared interests. Everybody on that island, regardless of their political stance, has a vested interest in the island not becoming a battlefield. The British presence, while controversial to some, acts as a stabilizing force that prevents any one side from getting too aggressive. It is a bit of a stalemate, but it is a peaceful one.
A peaceful stalemate. I like that. It is better than the alternative. And it allows us to have these deep conversations about the mechanics of power.
And that is why we keep doing this. There is always another layer to peel back, another treaty to read, or another data link to explain.
Well, I am ready for the next one. But I think I need a break from satellite imagery for at least an hour.
Haha, fair enough. Let's go see what Daniel is cooking for dinner. Maybe he has another prompt for us while we eat.
I would not be surprised. He has been on a roll lately. Alright, thanks again everyone for tuning in to my weird prompts. We really value your time and your curiosity.
We certainly do. See you in episode 995.
Take care, everyone.
Herman Poppleberry, signing off.
And Corn Puppleberry too. Bye for now.
Wait, Corn, did we mention the helicopters? The 84 Squadron?
We did. The Puma HC-2s. You mentioned them during the search and rescue bit.
Right. I just wanted to make sure. Those pilots are the unsung heroes of the Eastern Med. They are out there in all kinds of weather, saving sailors and hikers. It is a good reminder that the bases are not just about war, they are about service too.
A very good point to end on. Service and sovereignty.
Okay, now we are really done.
Haha. See ya, Herman.
See ya, Corn.
And thanks again to Daniel for the prompt. It was a good one.
A very good one indeed.
Alright, shutting down the mics now.
Goodbye, everyone.
This has been My Weird Prompts, a human-AI collaboration. Check us out on Spotify and at myweirdprompts.com. We will see you next time.
Bye.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My Weird Prompts, that's the close from sloth for man, from long-eared host. My Weird Prompts, until next time, stay curious, keep